flow so sick, hit the stretch your wrist. Baby, what's my name? I got you, baby. D-A-M-T-E, flow is so treacherous. Baby, what's my name? You never listen. The flow so sick, hit the stretch your wrist. Baby, what's my name? I got you, baby. D-A-M-T-E, flow is so treacherous. Baby, what's my name? You never listen. The flow so sick, hit the stretch your wrist. Baby, what's my name? I got you, baby. D-A-M-T-E, flow is so treacherous. Baby, what's my name?
You do it, dang. Don't you say a thing right? Baby, tell us all the stories. Don't you do a thing right? Baby, point to who had did it. Claim it's all the same, right? She stand up, tell us how to fix it. Like niggas, we cock them pistols. Keep my mama in them tissues. Trying to fix my baby issues. Trying to make a baby with you. Raise her like we meant to. Till the grave with you. I count the days with you. Rappers picking up the mic to tell us all their secrets with the fellas. Counting up the paper with the neighbors. They can't wait to tell us. Don't you see the fame? Yeah, I feel it all in my mouth. Jealous. I bet you make it rain. I bet the hoes will need umbrellas.
What the song says. I got you doing what the song says. I got you doing what the song says. Doing what the song says. I got you doing what the song says. It's a shame, but beyond there.
Let's change the game. I spit car raps. Matte black, all ink, want it all black. Rip a seat up, snatch it all back. Make her get it, girl. From all rap and all of that. Ask her what's the mission. She got a new invention. She says it's instrumental to fix these niggas' issue. I said, girl, say what is it? She said, you know that feeling when mama had to mean it. And just as I'm about to answer, rappers started dreaming. And so I had to bounce. I hope she find the meaning. I hope she make it count. Girl, if you don't write them rhymes, don't pop them out your mouth. These dudes will set you up, then try to box you out in a cell with no way out. Niggas barely come to visit, let you wait it out and let you map it out. So what's this all about? I'm not here to tell you, I'm here to rap it out. So what's my name?
You never listen. The flow so sick, hit this treacherous. Baby, what's my name? I got you, baby. D-A-M-T-E, flow is so treacherous. Baby, what's my name? You never listen. The flow so sick, hit this treacherous. Baby, what's my name? I got you, baby. D-A-M-T-E, flow is so treacherous. Baby, what's my name? You never listen. The flow so sick, hit this treacherous. Baby, what's my name? I got you, baby. D-A-M-T-E, flow is so treacherous. Baby, what's my name? You never listen. The flow so sick, hit this treacherous. Baby, what's my name? I got you, baby. D-A-M-T-E, flow is so treacherous. Baby, what's my name?
Let's get it. What's going on, y'all? What's happening? Let me get my screen situated. How is everybody doing today? What is going on? What's happening with you in the life? And a lot of us, we are really dealing with a lot of different things at the same time right now, okay? So it's okay if you feel a little weird, if things are kind of like blech, you know what I'm saying? So let's get this camera situated real quick. But yeah, today's topic is really going to be about mostly the great or weird decisions that we see artists make and how they're going to really navigate these things, right? Because a lot of times when we consider what it is we want to work on, we try to use our own perspective, and sometimes it doesn't really help us in the long run. Let me see what is going on with my camera here. Let me see. Bow, 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 bow. I'm not really sure why old buddy here is not doing what he's supposed to. Let's see. Discernment and how we really manage doing things. All right, we back in here. So we had some technical difficulties. I don't even know how it happened, what to fix it, but we fixed it because I'm a genius and it is what it is. So basically, to get back to it, we're going to be talking about a lot of the decisions that we see made by some of our favorite musicians, major artists, independent artists, whatever it is. And we're going to really try to figure out what is a good or bad decision when it comes to creating music. So we talked about networking. We talked about figuring out what to do in the industry as far as career decisions. But when we think about actual creativity, a lot of us feel like we're entitled to our level or our perspective and things like that. And for most of us, we can't really discern the difference. So we're going to look at a few different videos and try to figure out what's going on with these different decisions and how these things are going to be affecting us when we go forward, and pretty much get a little bit of a laugh, but we want to really look and understand, like, what are artists thinking about when they're making these decisions? Like, what is the focus? What is the main reason they're banking on these decisions, and these are very, very heavy decisions, maybe in the short term, but they're heavy decisions in general. And so we're trying to figure out what is this that we're thinking about, what's really motivating us to understand the consequences for our different decisions and things like that. And so that's what we're going to look forward to. So let's get into our first video. And this one actually is already gone viral. You probably already know what's going on with it, and it's actually pretty funny, but we're gonna check it out and let me know what you guys think here in the comments. All right,
he did one of his backyard concerts, right? And he said, I've got this song that my engineer begged me not to put out. Please don't put this out. Oh, here you go.
I ain't gonna let you do that.
Let him,
man, you probably should let it off. I made this record and I sent it off to my engineer.
Oh my God.
And he calls me. He said, man, you probably shouldn't put this out. I said, why? What the hell happened? He said, you talking about Epstein, there's a lot of shit going on. And I said, thank you for calling me. I'm gonna drop this.
I thought it was about to be something else.
That's exactly why we need
that
it.
stupid ass laugh should have told you that.
Everybody's sitting silent. And the goal of an artist is to express the times and say all the things that nobody else want to say or know how to say.
I ain't want to full of tell a little bit of truth.
I'm not perfect.
Joe's got a point there, but I've seen the clip, and I think the part that Lil Russell probably is slightly misunderstanding, and I'm gonna see if I can get his quote right before I say it.
Thank you for calling me. I'm gonna drop this.
I thought it was about to be something else.
That's exactly why we need
that
it.
Stupid ass laugh should have told you that.
Everybody's sitting silent. And the goal of an artist is to express the times.
The goal of an artist is to express the times.
And say all the things that nobody else want to say or know how to say.
I ain't want to full of
and discuss and say all the things that nobody else wants to say or knows how to say. And the part that I disagree with is the part where you're saying the part that nobody wants to say, right? And the thing is that for your career, that may not be the smart choice. For your beliefs, that may be the right choice. And the issue that many artists are going to struggle with when it comes to creative freedom is that, yes, you can believe something and you can also be right. You can be on the right side of things, but it also could negatively affect you to express it or express it a certain way. And so the part of us as artists is to understand that, because we are pretty much, as what he's saying is, as artists, our job is to kind of express things that's going on into the world. And then what my interpretation of this sentiment that most artists have is that we're supposed to reflect things, right? And so with the reflection part, you can't then go directly against that of which you're reflecting and then expect success. Okay, you should expect resistance. Not that you shouldn't do it, it's just expect resistance. And I'll give you an example. If everybody decided we're no longer going to clap on the beat 2 and 4. So what that is like if you hear a 1 clap, 2 clap, right? If you hear that in a song, then, or a 1, 2, 3, 4 count, and you're clapping on the 2 and 4 of every measure. If the world just decided we're going to flip it on its head and we're only clapping on 1 and 4, All right. We're only ever going to clap on 1 and 4. All right. For you to then go against all of that means you're going to meet resistance, means you're going to just meet a bunch of people that are going to say, hey, you're not doing it right. Do it this way. I prefer it this way. I like this. I don't like that. Maybe you should stop. All these type of things, right? Now, clapping your hands on a beat is not important. But if we change it from that to like missing people, the heart association, cancer research, you know what I'm saying? Like crime, you know, when you start considering these types of topics and these pursuits and these beliefs, then you'll start to realize how much more impactful it is to go against people and to actually deal with this resistance. Now, again, you can do this if you want to, right? But do you think about this when you're making decisions when it comes to your art, right? And so when I make music personally, I don't try to do such personal tropes in my music because it's too niche. Like I don't want to alienate people who will hear what I believe to be a really funky beat and then be turned off by what I'm talking about. And then in the reverse, I don't want people to hear really good lyrics and then be turned off because the beat is trash. I try to find like a cool balance of good music and then music that and lyrics that you can kind of like vibe to. Whatever mood it is, I try to go for, right? But then when you see artists try to do this, I'm gonna, you know, stand up against the world position. It's really hard to defend them because they typically don't want the result that they get. Another example would be when you see gangster rappers. A lot of gangster rappers really struggle with the aftermath of being a gangster rapper. So that means like now that you're 33 years old, 45 years old, and you want to start, you know, serving the community and like making clothes and like making businesses and stuff like that. The resistance you're up against now is all that shit you did before that has made you pretty much go against what common thought is, which is to not be a gangster rapper, right? Most people aren't that. And it's entertainment usually. So now when you're out in the, I guess, real world of the music industry where your demographic and your identity doesn't matter, that of which we discussed yesterday on the live stream where we looked at the Women in Music event, where I was discussing how I hope a lot of the event focuses on the musicality and supplements it with the fact that there's women's reputation, right? Representation in music. But what you'll see with like specifically gangster rappers is that they'll want representation, but they'll want it to look away, right? They won't try to fit into what we would generally call the music industry. They want it to everybody to kind of like, look, hey, look at me, you know, carve a lane type of thing. But they also refuse to deal with said resistance that comes with that. So you don't get booked in certain venues, you don't get looked at a certain way, and you don't get respected a certain way. That of which comes with whatever stigma that your demographic brings, right? So that's why I say you shouldn't really focus on these personal beliefs, these like super really agenda driven entitlements when it comes to selling records. Okay. Now, if you just want to make a song just to be like, yo, this is just on my heart, fine. But again, understand what's going on.
Tell a little bit of truth.
I'm not perfect, and neither is the president. Was guiltier than a nigga hiding evidence. You can't be mad that they heated if you don't let them vent. Even the devil was Heavensent.
Oh my God.
See, and then again, like I was saying, you don't want bad beat, good lyrics, bad beat. How do you know that's going on, right? And so part of it is, at least for me, you try to look at, like we were saying about discernment, you look at previous performances. I look at recordings of freestyles from like Wu-Tang, and you kind of realize like it's not just the fact that they can rap really well, but there's a lot of energy, mood, and tonality that comes in the delivery of what they're doing. That of which, if you were to recite the lyrics yourself in your bedroom right now, you'd probably be like a level 2. On their level 11 from being on stage, okay? And so when he says even the devil is Heavensent, how he delivered that seemed like he wasn't confident. Like he was still kind of like, maybe I should have listened to the engineer.
Malcolm was Heavensent.
Oh my God.
Even Martin was Heavensent. Even Kanye was Heavensent. We all Heavensent.
Oh my
Look at Mark
fucking
face.
goodness.
So confused.
Donald too.
Donald too.
Oh my
We all
God.
Heavensent.
Another thing too, when he was saying like speaking for people that don't say the things that most people are saying or that they can't say or won't say. When you're in a position to do that, you want to really understand what it is and who it is you're talking to, right? And it doesn't really matter if it's political or religious or however he wants to spin this, but this is not why people come to concerts. And that's the point that I think we need to understand here. Like, this could have been like woven into a really cool, maybe 2-bar line that could have just been like, blah. Like, if you could have creatively just had like a 2-bar, maybe 4-bar, little section on a really, really, really good structured song. But right now, what we're hearing sounds like praise and worship with like a small church. And he's just kind of just what feels like, because of the lack of confidence in the delivery, like I was saying with Wu-Tang, it feels like a freestyle. It feels like he just took a I guess you can say it's similar to like if you were in acting class or an improv class and your teacher was like, you're a person in a scene, and then they just tell you to act it out, and now you just have to wing it. That's how it feels. It feels that way. Now, he could have written this, he could have practiced this could have been the performance he wanted to give. But at the end of the day, this is what the people in the crowd are experiencing. And we're not even in the crowd, and this is how I feel.
That's scene 2. We all Heavensent. Adolf 2.
Whoa.
We all Heavensent.
And he's naming people that are like provocative. And I'll give you a tip too. Again, when we're talking about how to make good music, how to make bad music, what's the discernment between a good lyric and a bad lyric? If we were to just rewind this, I'm not going to do it because it's a little cringy. But if we were to think about what he's doing, he's naming provocative names or provocative people, like controversial people that make you go, huh, right? And the idea behind it is to get you to think about maybe contrasts of what you believe within yourself, right? But this is why people are making the faces they're making, is because how he's doing it sucks, okay? There are artistic ways to pull this off. There are really great ways, and there's also heavy-handed, blunt ways, right? You can have Rage Against the Machine, you can have Fuck the Police by NWA, or you can have They Don't Really Care About Us by Michael Jackson. So there's ways you can get it done, but the issue is that he's falling flat on like all the metrics just in this song and in this moment. It can be done, but if you had like an NBA 2K player with sliders, the delivery sliders on like a 3, the banger beat sliders on a 0, because there's really no beats. It's just a piano in the background. The lyrics are on like a 4 because you actually have like thought to this. So I'll give you a 4. And so after that point, what should the crowd be doing? Raising their hands, waving them like they don't care? Should they be holding a candle up? We don't know. Because he's just naming provocative names with no actual connection. There's no actual emotional connection to the immediate people in front of him. It's a thought. It's a talking point.
Even you.
See, even we're on the list. He put us on the list. Like, suddenly we're juxtaposed with what's going on here, and it doesn't cause us to think. It causes us to be confused.
They're gonna put me after Adolf. yo, find a different placement for me and you. I ain't even like where he put Martin and Malcolm in there.
Especially saying even.
That me up. I said, huh? What?
I understand what he was trying to do. He just did it absolutely horribly.
Yeah, Parks pretty much summed up everything I said in the past 4 or 5 minutes.
Dog,
Your engineer had your best interest in mind.
you
He
can't
tried to
go
help
from
you.
Satan to Malcolm. Nah.
We not doing that, my nigga.
It's saying even.
It's the even.
Even.
Even that words mean,
What the
man.
fuck is wrong with you? Nah.
Is he?
I think he is.
I'm mad we gotta bleep that word, man. Niggas is that.
Be that.
That, yo.
And to answer your question, it might be I might be rolling.
I'm conflicted on so many levels about this. One, I never saw La Russell as like a top of hour 2 type of guy, like an artist we got to get into.
Until you do something like this.
And I feel like he's going out of his way to insert himself in conversations that are unbecoming.
And he may be right here. I think Joe may be onto something, because people have drawn this conclusion with similar artists. And the issue, or the connection, not really the issue, that I've seen is that it comes from the Jay-Z camp, the Rock Nation camp. I don't know what that is. Maybe there's some connection to the people on the team. I don't think specifically Jay-Z. I think it's just like a business model they may be trying, where their biggest artists or their most prominent artists are doing things outside of music or musicality to get notoriety. Now, this has been done. It can happen, right? You can put out a t-shirt or maybe say something crazy like La Russell, but it being a strategy for artists seems to be what's leading to these bad, I would call bad decisions. Like, can we discern the difference between a good lyric and a bad lyric? If it goes, along a trend, like, can we determine the difference between a good and bad song if it fits within a trend that everybody's doing? And so when I consider things like that, it really gets difficult to kind of justify a lot of the decisions that these artists are making without considering the, I guess you can say, clout that comes with what they're doing, right? It doesn't really make sense to make a song like this if you're a backyard cookout rapper that's supposed to, MC and corral the crowd. It doesn't make sense. But it does if you're thinking about the current trends of the social topics right now, or the talking points on most podcasts. That's the part that leads people who are actually like going to be paying attention to your lyricism and your musicianship. They're going to notice that.
Yeah. This is like,
from the Wayne take to this,
The most he's ever been talked
right
about.
after getting the big look from Rock Nation.
Rock Nation.
To how he handled the backlash from the Wayne. This right here. Let me make myself clear. I agree with him about artistic expression.
For sure.
Absolutely.
That is a fact. The great part about that is an artist is typically able to view something or hear something or see something or draw something or paint something that somebody who is not artistic won't be able to do.
And that's what La Russell meant. The ability to create something that someone that does not have that creative skill. That's what he meant. He did not mean saying things that people are scared to say. Because the issue with a lot of new musicians and artists is that they think that they are correct and they're entitled to their convictions when they haven't passed it through any other filters socially. So because they have influence or access to a large group of people, or they have quote unquote power on society and social media, they feel as though what they're going to say out their mouth is accurate. And the problem with that is, even with myself, like, you have to sit back for a second and say, okay, this is how I feel, but now I have to really look at what it is I want to say, right? And then be able to stand on the conviction. When you're looking at something like what La Russell is doing, the reason a lot of people immediately caught it was because you can't stand on anything he's saying. Like, just foundationally, there's nothing within the song, at least, that could lead you to say, yes, I believe this. Yes, I agree. Because you would then have to question it down to the core on why it would work, right? And so what artists have basically developed is a skill to turn that thought process into music, that thought process into film, where they can actually hire people, let's say in a movie, to express the thoughts that you may have, and then also watch the thoughts you may have interact with another person who has maybe different thoughts or even similar thoughts, and then have that whole thing come out to a conclusion where everybody can say, okay, this means whatever it is. This is what we are, in belief with. And so that can look like, let's say, a Star Wars. The reason so many people support Star Wars is because the story kind of validates itself. You're clearly in space and dealing with aliens, so you remove reality, right? But after that point, you can get some conviction in the characters. You can get some conviction in the environment and the interactions and relationships of people. It would fall flat if every time somebody walked into a room, they just started sword fighting, just instant lightsabers, just going ham. Like, it wouldn't really make sense. It would just look like a cartoon. And so when you start doing things like just naming provocative people or just giving talking points on screen, a big one now on hip hop is just platitudes, where you just say random cool things like, I bought a watch and the watch looks shiny. Look at the diamond's bright. Like, when you just say things like that, what you'll then start doing is you'll lose the conviction behind what you're saying, because it doesn't matter. Like, you're just rhyming words, right? And this is where poetry really shined in like the 80s, 70s, and 90s, where if you heard a song, the reason you usually kept that song and wanted to share it with somebody is because you had a little bit of conviction behind it. Either it was like, it made you want to break dance on a cardboard box, or it made you really fall in love with your ex again. And so now artists have lost that in modernity, because we don't have A&R, artist and repertoire positions, but we also don't have podcasts like this that break down what it is you need to be doing to be successful in the music industry. We're breaking down, usually when we hear these things, how to create, how to hear about news, and also how to keep up with trends. But when we think about what we're actually creating for the sake of creation, usually it takes a little bit of a step back for many artists to see that, because making music is easy, especially with AI today. So creating is not hard. Understanding what you want to create and getting a specific result is hard. And that is where artists shine. So like Joe was saying, you should be able to do things creatively that many people that don't have that skill should. And with the tools we have today, you have less and less of a smaller learning curve for people who aren't as creative to then do this. Now, that isn't a shot towards La Russell or artists like La Russell. It's a shot at generally people's approach to music. Like, you should, if you want to be a singer, learning how to sing is probably part A, right? Part B is going to be knowing how to deliver emotion. Part C is going to be delivering emotion to a mass of people, like a room of 20. And then part D is going to be able to do that repetitively. And that's where you're then just a regular singer. Like, that's when you're now normal. After that point, then you get into like business, networking, and understanding relationships and doing that. But if we don't get this as artists, like I said, we're not going to really understand, at least in La Russell's position, what's happening. Like, he clearly was told by his engineer, hey, this won't work. But if he understood what his engineer meant by that full through, then it would really look crazy why he went on and did this.
For sure.
Absolutely.
That is a fact. The great part about that is an artist is typically able to view something or hear something or see something or draw something or paint something that somebody who is not artistic won't be able to do. So it's brilliant. If you're going to go out there and say, hey, all of these evil people are Heavensent and we're all made by the same creator. Awesome.
Well,
Lean on the second part more than the first part.
Real quick, because Heavensent doesn't mean made by the creator.
Yes, that's
Heavensent
exactly.
means something that's good and
Right.
And that's another part of lyricism. So I'm currently in like hymnal study, right? And this is a big thing well, at least was a big thing with songwriters that I clearly see is not a thing anymore. And I noticed this, at least in my generation, with Lil Wayne, where Lil Wayne would do these double and triple entendres, and it would be like a struggle for a lot of people to catch him. And then when he eventually wouldn't do that, everything else seemed cooler to them. So that's where I was like, maybe there's like an understanding gap between language, the usage of language, and then especially the artistic usage of language, because language has contexts to it. Like, there's formal, there's informal, there's colloquial, and then you have poetic, and then you have, literary language. You have a lot of different ways you can use words, right? So what I'm pointing out is, like, you notice how nobody knows what La Russell meant, but they generally have the same conclusion, okay? That still happened even though he used the word incorrectly. So that level of communication is something that humans just have, right? We can walk into a room full of people of all kinds of walks, and then we just start grunting and communicating. That's how humans can do it. It's similar to like animals, right? The part that artists are going to struggle with is that now that we're noticing, and I'm gonna get into this probably next month, we're noticing a decline in literacy. There's going to be a gap between how an artist expresses themselves and the ability for the consumer to understand what they're doing. And then the artist has to figure out how to connect those dots, right? You'll see many people say you got to put medicine in the candy. That's how they'll say it. Like, so the women, they got to rap and twerk and then get naked in order for them to actually express emotion. Right. And then for the men, they got to be like provocative, bravado, braggadocious, and take their shirts off and rah, rah, rah for you to realize they're actually intellectual. And so that gap is starting to get wider and wider as far as what people are willing to be entertained by and what people actually understand just because of education. It has nothing to do with what artists want to do and what people want to listen to. So the fact that he's explaining the definition of Heavensent and they all still came to a general conclusion with the incorrect usage of Heavensent proves to you how powerful it is to be ignorant, right? So as an artist, what do you do? If you know that you can be in a position to write lyrics and then control the people's emotions and things like that, what direction do you take, right? Joe mentioned that it seems like he's trying to do these things, or it seems like a strategy, right? That is a possibility. But then when you think about how you would do that, that would be almost the level of crazy super villain type IQ to say that I'm going to use this word this way, knowing generally it's going to be meant this way and that it's used incorrectly. That's a level of human, like, I don't know what that would be called, like human understanding, that if that were to be true, Joe, then he would be in more control than like many scientists when it comes to like international wars. Like that's what I mean. Like that's the part that lyricism doesn't get talked about until we start digging into singers and like pop mainstream stars. Usually with rap, we're okay with informal language, incorrect usage of words and things like that. And we draw these similar conclusions because of cultural context. The issue is that if you start dipping into mainstream audiences, now your culture is going to be met with another culture's perspective, and you have to really justify and again, stand on the conviction of what you're saying. So if he tries to do that with what we're saying now, Mark Lamont is about to explain why you can't do that.
Awesome.
Well,
Lean on the second part more than the first part.
Real quick, because I want Heavensent doesn't mean made by the creator.
Yes, that's
Heavensent
exactly.
means something that's good and fortunate, like a stroke of luck. This was Heavensent,
Like
so
sit down from heaven.
yeah, like as a good thing. So it's not just like this is made by God. It's a good. So it's actually
That's not the context that he's using.
No,
That's
so
what I'm
you're
saying.
clearing that up for a lot of
who
people
don't
out
know, 'cause
there.
I was knowing Joe get clipped out of context. So he's like, yeah, Hitler was Heavensent. You know, like no, like don't. That ain't what that means.
Yeah, that's
Russell.
not what that means. Yeah.
And you see how easy it is to do it, right? I've probably done it. You've probably done it. It's very, very easy to do that with words that we use often, words we may have never heard, but, you know, have heard of. And so him bringing that clarity was very important because now you have a situation of, well, what did he mean? What was the actual word, phrase, or context that he was in? Because we're all alluding. And that's why I said everybody in the room is generally coming to the same conclusion, but he used incorrect language. So culturally, this would work. Like culturally, if they were like, I'm pretty sure when he wrote the song, his engineer was like, yo, this is a dope song. I get what you're going for. But then when they eventually put it out, the producer probably realized it doesn't hold water. Like it doesn't really mean anything. And it's just provocative. This is not you, this is not what it is, or it's not what we're trying to do, right? So that's very important to point out because now when we get into writing lyrics and you see things like we shouldn't use lyrics in the court system, this brings things up. Like, is it that you don't understand what your lyrics are doing, or is it that you really do understand what you're doing with your lyrics and you're trying to generate some kind of reaction? And so this level of control, I guess I'll give my opinion here, is that I think many artists should understand that they have the authority here. If you leverage this authority to whether it's the law or culture, then you lose it. Your creative freedom is lost. And that looks like this, what LaRussell's going through. Culturally, he's trying to fit in what the trend is with musicians. Instead of just making a great song, he's looking for something, right? And then the reason we know he's looking for something, because the thing he's presenting to us is nothing that he personally feels based on his true convictions. It's based on a talking point that he didn't clearly flesh out completely. And so now we have a situation of, do we hold him responsible for what he's saying right now on this stage? Like you would a Young Thug, like you would a YG, like you would any other pimp rapper and things like that. Or do we look at this as just him being a silly, funny, creative person who just happened to speak or misspeak? And so this is the part that I think many artists are going to struggle with. This is a lighter version of what many artists are going to struggle with, but you have to have some kind of level of conviction with what you are going to put out to people, because they're going to challenge you. And then if they challenge you and you look crazy, you're going to look crazy, and that will affect your career. And you need to think of this as a decision and not necessarily just your creative freedom.
So we think what he was trying to say was these people were made by the same creator.
Yes.
But he said Heavensent, which has a different definition, which is absolutely horrible. But my thing is,
Say it better.
Say it better.
It's a very, we all are made by God.
Yeah.
Now what?
And that's the point right there. And Joe, him being the kind of lyricist that he is, probably understands that part a little bit more. But the thing that LaRussell had to get through was that, like, okay, we'll break it down from a musical perspective first. Musically, it was slow, low energy, and it took a really, really long time to drive the point home. If I were to play in an orchestra and I'm playing a 6-minute song and it takes 3 of those minutes to get to the loud part, most people would fall asleep if the quiet part is not gorgeous and pretty, intricate, or really delivering the point, right? What LaRussell wound up doing is he gave us what was an idea, but he didn't flesh it out, like I said, to get to like a full conviction as to why he's saying what he's saying or why we should consider what he's saying, right? He's just saying it. And so when you don't have that, lyrically, you will fall flat, because a lot of times the audience is missing something to attach themselves to. They don't know why you're saying what you're saying, like I said, but then they also don't have a reason to debate what you're saying because you just said it. It'd be like if the lyric wasn't so-and-so is Heavensent and it was just like, eat your vegetables. Like most people would just be like, yeah, I guess, but why are you saying this? Why should I rap alongside you? Why should I dance to this song and things like that? I don't know if, again, LaRussell knew that part going into this, or if this was just him trying to take creative freedom, and this is where he's at right now.
Like, what else? Like, it's a very surface level. It's no thought put into it. It seems like you're just saying something for the clicks, for the attention. Like, if you're an artist and you're standing on artistic expression, then when you tell me that these people are made from the creator, then delve deeper into that thought.
He should have.
And that part is very difficult to do from the position he's in, which is why I think he stopped right there. Because when you're starting to use things like Heavensent and things like that, you start to dive into Christianity. And then when you dive into Christianity, you got to figure out which testament he's talking about and all this stuff like that. And for many people, when you start diving into those types of topics, you will eventually, again, have to start diving into everything. And you're going to have to make sure your conviction is clear. And you're going to have to make sure the things you're resisting up against are clear too, because you can't just be saying stuff on songs and expect no one to respond, right? So because he didn't do that, we don't know if he doesn't know these things or if it doesn't matter to him or if he's not considering them. We just know he didn't do that.
Or be artistic. Or be more artistic in how you deliver it. You gotta make separations. You have to.
I could come up with a list of people.
Okay, I just want y'all to see real quick. I'm gonna rewind it. We just saw a stark contrast between a writer and a fan. I want you to hear how Joe explained this, and then I want you to hear how the co-host explain this, and just think about for a second the vocabulary everybody's using.
You're just saying something for the clicks, for the attention. Like, if you're an artist and you're standing on artistic expression, then when you tell me that these people are made from the creator, then delve deeper into that thought.
He should have.
Or be artistic.
Or be more artistic in how you deliver it. You gotta make separations. You have to.
I could come up with a list of people that did some up and some good and say, hey, these people all haven't seen. Like what?
Like, do you see how simplified their explanations are? Be more artistic, make separations, right? Now, this could be one of two things. This can be their understanding of musical theory, or this could be their understanding of, let's say, performance theory. Like, how do you perform live? Because they're clearly like entertainment industry type of people. So they go to shows and see people live and things like that all the time. Now, this is my point here, though. When we're talking about the understanding of lyricism and what people are going to be understanding when you put something out, they all still came to the same conclusion. But did you see how vastly different they both broke down what they heard, right? So here's what you're up against now. Deference. How do you know which person has the ear you need to listen to your music and to understand what you're saying? And then also, how do you know which ear is listening to your music that's going to be able to criticize you accurately? Because everybody in this room came to the same conclusion with different understandings, and you still used the word incorrectly and still didn't dive deeper, that of which they all came to the conclusion, right? So how do you now deal with writing a song, going into like making a hit and things like that, without it sounding like Justin Bieber's onomatopoeia era, where they were just making noises for hooks, right? Making TikTok songs. Like, how do you get past this surface level thinking, but then still deliver what you think is a really, really deep message? And that's really hard to do. But I just wanted to draw that contrast because most people think like these two gentlemen right here, but they will look at it as if they think like Joe. And the point that we need to see here is that one of these three people has delivered on their conviction here. Okay. So there's that part. And this is where we'll start leading into in the future, where I talk about anime fans create more anime than you see anime writers. So you'll see music fans making way more music than you see actual musicians, especially with the introduction of these tools and technology like AI. So our understanding of what we're listening to isn't really coming from someone like a Joe who's trying to deliver something like this. It would more than likely come from a person like La Russell on a major level. Like, he's backed by Rock Nation. And so considering these things, how do you navigate in an industry as an artist, knowing what I just said, and you want to deliver a deep message similar to like La Russell, but you have to deal with the listening of, let's say, fans like this, but then also have to have the conviction for listeners like Joe?
What was the artistic part about that? Yeah. And any one of us in this room could have done that exact same thing. Yeah.
Also, my thing is,
and the fact that they think they can do it too proves to you that what you did wasn't exceptional. You know, I hate when artists do this, and even just great people in general. They try to be relatable. They want people to be like, oh, I'm a normal person, I'm just regular. And it's like, if you keep thinking that, then you might as well get off the stage, because no one pays to see a normal person. We want to see rock stars. We want to see super people. And so the idea that you get to just be chill and normal, I just want to be myself and relax, that's fine. But you better rap, you better sing, you better look great, you got to do something exceptional, because that's why people are here. And again, if artists don't understand this, then I don't think you're really in the music industry. I think you're just a musician.
Part of being an artist for me means being more in tune with the times and the people, right, than just the guy that's not. Bad time to do all this.
Horrible time.
Like, you couldn't have picked the worst time. We at war. There's the Epstein files. There's too much real going on in the union.
And it just seems like he's just being provocative. Like I said, he's just kind of like, oh, well, this is what y'all mad about. Well, I say it's a good thing. Since everybody want to go vegan, I'm going to eat more meat. Like, that's all he's just saying. It's like a child throwing a temper tantrum through a song.
Universe for you to pop out here and say, hey, all these people are great. No, La Russell. No.
And it makes me think that's not an artistic direction. That makes me think that's more of a social media influencer direction.
No.
Do you think he's doing it for just more notoriety, conversation pieces? Do you think that's what it is?
I think it was an attempt to have conversations, and notoriety is not what you're going to get from this.
To answer your question,
Not true. It may be bad notoriety, but
okay,
yeah, like literally, you'll be notorious.
I think he's positioning himself to not be successful in music.
Yeah,
really.
Damn, and Joe might be right in the sense of, now we got to slow down and think what he said, because Joe said what he means in a very short sentence, and I'm gonna try to break down my interpretation. Right, what Joe means is that you can be popular, you can be famous, but we're not booking you. Okay. And you can be a really, really good rapper. You can be a really nice guy and we can love who you are, but we're not booking you. And so that part right there is the issue that you'll see a lot of artists go through. Shit, you'll even see it with actors and actresses, where again, he's using these controversial talking points as well as probably his identity and his culture to try and drive home what he believes is going to be the engine for success. The issue is that mainstream media uses culture and identity as, I guess you can say, a supplement to talent. Okay. At the end of the day, you have to have talent and then also outwork everybody, right? Being who you are doesn't really matter if you work the hardest, right? Or if you're getting the most bookings, or you have the most consistent deliverable product, right? What Joe is saying is that this is going to make him maybe a thought leader. Maybe people might agree with him and want to hear him think and talk and things like that. But when it comes to saying, all right, we have a BB King, we have a Michael Jackson, we have a Lady Gaga, like these names you're not going to be sitting next to. You may be around, but these things aren't going to be why we remember your name. We may remember you for your thinking and maybe the songs you made and the good times you gave us. But in order for you to really sit down and say, all right, who's my top 5? Who's my top 10, 20, 30 or whatever? That list of people's top 5, it rotates like every 4 years. Like at a time, Big Crit was on people's top 5, and then he got probably moved by Kendrick Lamar at a point. Like, we don't know. But the point is that really, really, really talented people, really good artists, really nice people that we like and probably can identify with. They're black and they're men and they're successful, whatever. They all have to deal with the fact that being successful in music has more so to do with music. And everything around that is really not going to be important, because you're going to have to deal with things like what LaRussell's dealing with, which is really nothing to do with music. It's just, he misspoke and wrote a bad song. You can just, knock this out the park. But now we're not dealing with a bad song. We're dealing with conviction. we're dealing with bad decision making now.
That's what it looks like. It looks like he's setting up. This is a great move if you in the future are about to be some type of political black pundit or just whatever you. I don't know. Not rap.
I don't even take that. I think
the same thing.
He's been rapping for, what he said, he got 40 albums or something like that. And nobody's talking about me.
Yeah, it seemed like he's trying to be like Dick Mensa.
And now, this nigga's stupid.
No, seriously.
I don't know if that's true, if he has 40 albums and nobody's talking about it, but what that leads me to believe is that that's a quantity over quality conversation, or maybe it's a cultural thing. Like maybe, like for example, when we started talking last week about how tech companies and streaming companies deliver you guys music, I made it a point to point out that a lot of times you guys don't look for music. Like you're not looking up your city's local rappers to see what they just posted this week. Like that age of SoundCloud and like DatPiff, all that's over with. Like mixtapes and stuff like that, it's over with. So if you don't carve through people's algorithm past Taylor Swift, they're not seeing you, right? And when I say that, that's a generality, meaning like I know your cousin raps, right? Your cousin does beats, or you got some friend online, he does like a couple songs here and there and things like that. Maybe he's got some t-shirts he sells. But you're not going to support this artist at the level of a Taylor Swift, meaning like just blind support, just straight up, oh, that's that concert, I'll go just to be there because it's the hottest thing out. Like you're not going to do that. And so when we face that reality, then we start to think about why all these artists are making the decisions they're making. Okay. They have to get your attention. They have to figure out how to keep your attention. And then also, what is it that you're paying attention to? Is it literally how good they rap, how good they sing? Because if it is, then you would see artists focusing on that. You would see artists focusing on better lyricism, learning to play an instrument, playing, I don't know, practicing their instruments or whatever. You would see that, but you would see it to the point of music's sake, not for notoriety. Like, you wouldn't see hip hop violinists because there's a new song. You would see hip hop violinists because violinists want to learn hip hop, right? And so that's the part that I think many people really, really fail to understand because of how easy it is to make music. Most people aren't musicians making music. And then how easy it is to get access to music. $10.99, you can get the planet's world of music in your home. Like, the major owners of all the world's music are on most streaming platforms. Like, you're not going to get the top country's musical artist not on a streaming site. So that means you can get access to it for a nominal fee. Okay. You won't be paying $100 for a record. You'll be paying 10 for 30 days worth of access, unlimited plays. Remember when we used to pay for text messages and minutes? Those days are over. Okay. So now you got to think about, okay, what am I really going to be doing here? What is this industry? I want to be really good at music. I want to write really deep lyrics and I want people to feel what I'm saying. And the biggest thing right now is Tekashi 6ix9ine. So what do you do?
Like, it seemed like he want to go under a tree on Instagram and just talk about some things, but putting it in song. And then if you're going to put it in song,
make it a good one.
Like, hate to be the bearer of bad news. I hate to sound like Amani. The songs don't be
good.
That. And LaRussell, you might be a great guy. I've never met you. Maybe that'll happen one day if I ever go over there to LA. But I just don't get what you're doing. I don't get it. I couldn't believe it.
Man, we've talked about LaRussell more times this year than we ever have.
And it's gotten him what? But a migraine and a sleepless night here and there, and to get attacked by a bunch of people who had no idea who you were.
Some people take that risk, bro. Some people want that. That's that whole algorithm everybody be talking about today.
And this is the part that is the case. Now, I want y'all to pay attention to two things here, right? I've had conversations like this with musicians, and I've had conversations like this with fans. The opportunity here, and this is my conclusion, the opportunity here is way more valuable to everyone than it is to be accurate. Okay. So just pay attention to how easily they will just quickly switch over to, well, I see why he did it.
And a sleepless night here and there, and they get it. I couldn't believe it.
Man, we've talked about LaRussell more times this year than we ever have.
And it's gotten him what? But a migraine and a sleepless night here and there, and to get attacked by a bunch of people who had no idea who you were.
Some people take that risk, bro. Some people want that. That's that whole algorithm everybody be talking about today. Like, some people, all right, cool. My name is in the news cycle now. I'm being mentioned. I'm on the blogs. I'm on the podcast. All of that. I'll take it.
If you're able to ignore and filter out the negative, the fact that your name is being mentioned means something to some of these people.
That's a very low bar.
Yeah.
Well, nah, hold on.
Albeit
low bar. What? No, that's subjective. What low bar? What's low about the bar?
So, before we go on, I want you to pay attention to what I said earlier. Do you see the stark difference between the people who are saying one point and then the people who are saying another point? Parks and Joe Budden have released albums together that you can listen to now, right? The other three gentlemen I would assume to be more so investors or consumers of music than actual producers, right? And so what you're starting to see is a stark difference between how artists view the behaviors of what LaRussell just showed us and how consumers may view this, okay? And so what Joe and Parks are saying is that it's a very low bar to get attention for the sake of attention without having essentially a vehicle to utilize that, right? If all you get is attention, then it's not worth it. But if you can get the attention and monetize it, then that's another thing. If you can get the attention and actually garner more influence, more investments, more opportunities, then that's another thing. But if all you're getting is just attention, the artist and producer in the room, Parks being the producer, Joe being the artist, are saying that's a low bar. we should be demanding more or higher quality, I guess you can say, value from the industry. The other three gentlemen, they're saying essentially that bar is what people are okay with having, because then they can then create the vehicle that they have, right? Or utilize the vehicle that they have. Now, I want you to let me know in the comments why they believe what they believe, if everything we just said about artists is what we believe, okay? So if we believe that artists are actually in control of what they say, they have to have conviction behind what they say, and they also will be held responsible for what they say when it's time to, explain themselves or actually be a human. Why would a person then say, well, it's justified to get attention for the sake of attention through being inaccurate, not having conviction behind what you're saying, and then also not being able to explain or justify what it is you're saying? Why do you think they would think that's okay as consumers of music?
That's a very low bar.
Yeah.
Well, no, hold on.
Albeit
low bar. What? No, that's subjective. What's low bar? What's low about the bar? Once your name is being mentioned, once you have clicks, you're able to present it to companies and show, regardless of what it is, just the surface level thing, you're able to present it and get a bag out of it. That's
engagement
not low.
And all that. Yeah,
it's not low.
So for them, as he's explaining it, the engagement is what you're sending as a value to, I guess, companies and sponsorships. Now, let's rewind to what we talked about, I think 2 days ago. Probably Monday we talked about this. When we talk about who we want to collaborate with and who we want to do business with, if we were to take a snapshot of what he just said, his business model is to create something, build value, and then, remember our vocabulary, exploit the product with other people and partners in order to get income, right? To get a profit. Now, when you do that, we just spoke about the Jimi Hendrix estate yesterday. When you do that, what actually happens to the authority, responsibilities, and ownership of that product, that name, and that likeness? So you have to be extremely careful on what it is people are using as the context in what he just explained. Because for a musician, what he's explaining is your masters. He's not talking about your name. He's not talking about the name La Russell or fans or tickets. No, he's talking about your masters, because in the music industry, as an artist, you create music. You don't create vibes. You're doing performances as a supplement to you being able to create. Like, you perform the song so that way we can fund you creating, right? Being a artist takes a very particular level of control in order for you to have leverage, right? And so what he's offering here as a solution or as an opportunity is to say, build all your leverage. Remember, they said La Russell has 40 plus albums that they claim nobody's talking about. Build all your leverage and then use the leverage to exploit the product you've created. Okay, that's what he's suggesting. Now, the word exploit might make y'all cringe and clutch your pearls, but really all that means is just to sell it, just to use it and get people utilizing it in business. That's all that really means.
So we got to.
He's right.
If you're
you go into details,
there's
about,
nothing that Russell just said that's going to help him.
What I'm saying is that but he said, okay,
he's going to get demonetized. They're going to cite him for hate speech.
That's true.
They're going to shadow ban him. They're going to not distribute him.
That's true. Get your shit off.
Like what you're saying is true for somebody who said something different.
Something stupid. Yeah.
Yeah.
They sound like somebody that's doing that, but don't know all the.
He is gonna get shot.
Yeah, he don't even know that when I say this, all those things you just said are about to happen. I don't know that. All I know is, okay, cool. Let me do this. This is gonna get me talked about some more. Yeah. And now you're gonna bump your head and realize, oh.
And again, do you see the stark difference in the understanding of the decision? All I'm gonna do is just say this, and then we're gonna be good. Do you see how that works?
And you think you're standing on business. You think you're standing on business. Yo, my producer told me I shouldn't play this, but
you know what else new acts need to learn sometime? Shut the up. Yeah. You ain't always got to say something. You don't always got to be heard or get in the mix. I know with this new age, monetize everything, attention. You feel like that. You don't have to comment on all of it. You don't.
And you know what? It's hard to tell them to shut the fuck up.
And that's the really big point here, is that a lot of times the creative expression that you have isn't really the point, right? You see it a lot, I guess you can say, in a more exacerbated moment when you look at female artists. Female artists struggle with this because they try to really interweave like a lot of their musical skills and their talents and things like that. But the fans don't really want to see none of that. They don't care and they don't really understand it because that's not what they're looking for. And so what you'll then see is a lot of backlash, or you'll see the artists start to kind of resent their fans, but you shouldn't really do that because at the end of the day, like Joe is saying, it is what it is, right? You're in a position to sell records to people who have a demand, right? If you want to make music for yourself, then you should have the website you play it on, the streaming distribution that you control, and all kinds of leverage. Otherwise, you're dealing with the beast of an audience. Your audience is on Spotify, your audience is on Apple Music, and like I said, they're dealing with the algorithms of those streaming sites to find you. You have to fight through that pretty much. And a lot of the times what artists are doing is they're figuring out weird provocative things like what LaRussell did to just stay on your screen. Like I just put him on your screen, right? But how much of what we talked about was about music? How many of you are going to listen to the music? And then when you do, that's when you can make a decision on whether or not you want to support the music part of it and not this Heavensent word thing. So let's get into the next topic. Let's see what we got going on here.
Katy Perry, the pop sensation known for her vibrant personality and chart-topping hits, has found herself at a crossroads in her career following the underwhelming performance of her latest album. The album, which was highly anticipated by fans and critics alike, failed to resonate in the way her previous works did, leading to speculation about her future in the music industry. As she navigates this challenging phase, sources suggest that Perry is increasingly desperate for a comeback, and her eyes may be set on returning to American Idol to reignite her career. The pressure to deliver hits is a constant in the music industry, especially for artists like Perry, who have set high standards with their past successes.
And that's a great point too. I would say too, when you are trying to figure out what kind of path you want to be as a musician, the Katy Perrys and the pop stars of the world, again, they don't put out mass amounts of music. They put out high quality music, okay? And so what they're going to run into a lot of times is quality trends and then also social trends, right? Most of the time when I think Katy Perry was out, there was a certain kind of like flavor to most of pop music in America. That flavor is shifting now. I don't know what it is today. We're in like a weird little quagmire of music right now where people don't really have a genre. You see LaRussell, he's just doing praise and worship music in backyards. So a lot of things that people are gravitating towards is more so social media driven, clout driven, and not really musicality, right? And that was kind of what began this, or I would say Katy Perry's era of music began a lot of that, because they weren't really in social media, but their music videos were very like social media ready. Okay. And so more and more artists are starting to move that way. And I think for her, it's going to be a bit of a struggle to have to figure out, well, how do I deliver what I would consider high quality music with what I was talking about in the last video to an audience that has an understanding for TikTok? Like TikTok snapshot level music. That's what she's competing with, right? But she has to compete with it on the level of the Katy Perry brand. So that doesn't mean she gets to use her creative freedom and just try shit and just throw it on the wall. No, as I said, pop stars have to create high quality music, not a high quantity of music. And so now she has to really, really be laser focused on the next album that drops. She can't bank on 40 albums like LaRussell. She has to bank on the next album. And the reason why is because she's basically running a brand that's a machine. There's probably writers, makeup artists, studios, all kinds of equipment, and people and investors banking on the name Katy Perry and her masters, right? So the gentleman in the Joe Budden podcast that were talking about how clout and likes and things like that can bring you to a position where you can now leverage that to other companies. Well, companies know that too. And so when they see a name like Katy Perry, they know that comes with a certain level of numbers, likes, and influence. That of which, if she doesn't deliver, pushes her out the way for somebody who does. And this is why her decisions have to be extremely focused, and she can't really express herself creatively as much as we would like to believe at somebody at her level. So if artists understand this going into this, then you can make a lot of the decisions that will hinder your career, like a La Russell or something like that, a lot more strategic.
Hits like Firework, Teenage Dream, and Roar established her as a formidable force in pop music, but the landscape has changed dramatically. The rise of new artists, shifting musical trends, and evolving audience preferences have made it difficult for seasoned stars to maintain their dominance. Perry's latest album, while showcasing her signature sound, simply didn't capture the public's imagination in the same way.
And that part right there is what hits artists hardest the most. Tyler, the Creator, I want to say Kendrick Lamar, Currency, Tech Nine, T-Pain. I'm trying to think of like hip hop pop acts and a mix of them. Currency is not really a pop act, but he's a good variety type of artist. But the point is here is that Katy Perry's brand is probably known for a thing now. And so I don't know who her team is or who her artist and repertoire person is, but they clearly have decided to stick with what the brand is known for. And that's changed over time. I think we saw a couple years ago, if not a year ago, Cracker Barrel, the restaurant Cracker Barrel started to go through a logo change and people lost their freaking minds, right? We don't know what it is that makes people so attached to a brand or also not really want a brand to stay so consistent. We don't know what it is. But the thing is that I think Katie's team didn't know that. Similar to Cracker Barrel's team didn't know that. The part of you being a artist is understanding this. That was the big conversation about La Russell, is that he was clearly, I guess you can say, not aware. Like he was just lacking a whole bunch of awareness of what's going on. And we're starting to see it with a La Russell, who's an independent artist who just got distribution with Roc Nation, all the way up to Katy Perry, who was basically top of the top right now.
In the aftermath of the album's release, Perry has been candid about her feelings of disappointment. Many artists go through ups and downs, but for Perry, this moment feels particularly pivotal. The pressure of the music industry is amplified when an artist's brand is so closely tied to their image and the success of their projects. Fans have seen her through her highs and lows, but the recent flop has left many wondering about her next move. One avenue that Perry seems keen to explore is her role as a judge on American Idol. Since joining the show's reboot in 2018, she has brought a fresh energy and charisma that has resonated with viewers. Her experience and star power lend credibility to the show, and her interactions with contestants often showcase her genuine passion for music and mentorship.
Okay, so we're going to listen to that one more time, and I want y'all to pay attention to what actually is a musical talent that people value that translates into them thinking that she is passionate about music. One more time.
Idol. Since joining the show's reboot in 2018, she has brought a fresh energy and charisma that has resonated with viewers. Her experience and star power lend credibility to the show.
So her experience and star power lend credibility, right? So her experience as a singer, right? Clearly she's a really good singer. And the star power, what people mean by star power, right? Just to clarify, they don't mean makes a lot of money, sells a lot of records, gets a lot of followers, and is popular. What they mean is by when people say your name, things move, okay? So for example, if Katy Perry were to come to, I don't know, your local jazz fest, right? If people start whispering her name and then like suddenly her car pulls up and people all turn their heads toward the car, and then when she gets out, nothing but camera flashes happen, that's called star power. It's because it's changing the behavior of the humans in the room and in the environment. That doesn't happen with really rich people. Like you could be in the room with a gazillionaire, and because they're just chill and laid back, you will never know, right? So star power is more of the command of, I guess you can say, emotions and behavior of people in a room without having to demand it. Like you can just, it's presented to you.
And her interactions with contestants often showcase her genuine passion for music and mentorship.
So all of that lines up to people believing in her passion for mentorship and musicianship. The problem with that is, I'm sure this is just a snapshot, is that we don't know what that looks like, right? Just because we have consistent work doesn't really prove that. Like there's school teachers who probably can exemplify this a lot better.
This role has not only helped elevate her profile, but has also kept her in the public eye during a time when her musical career may not have been as vibrant. Returning to American Idol could serve multiple purposes for Perry. Firstly, it would provide her with a platform to reconnect with fans and showcase her personality outside of her music.
And there it is. Outside of her music, we get to see her personal life and her personality and things like that. Now, I want you to be honest. As a consumer or a person who's considering being an artist or an actual artist, do you think people care? Do you think that's something you would bank your career on, is my point here. Like if your doctor wound up telling you about like their personal life, would you then suddenly not trust their skills as a doctor? Like, does that matter to you? And if it does matter to you, then how much of her musicality matters to you in a list of priorities? Like which one comes first? If she was a terrible human but was still Katy Perry, would you still support Katy Perry music, or vice versa? She was a terrible singer and wasn't really as good. Would you still support her because she's charismatic and has experience and really has great interactions with the contestants? Would you still work with her? Now, I'm pointing that out to say, I think a lot of artists in her position are realizing that now, whereas LaRussell have started out doing that. And so we're getting to a point to where now the consumers have to be, I guess you can say, almost handpicked if you want a certain result from them, right? But I want to kind of pivot and then talk about what they were really meaning by this album being a flop, because we can get into the whole American Idol thing, but like I told you, people are getting in the podcast and all that stuff, doing crazy things all the time as musicians to justify their musicianship when it lacks any understanding of musicianship, right? So I looked up a little bit of the information here, and it says in my notes, Katy Perry's sixth studio album, 143, was widely labeled a flop due to a combination of poor commercial performance, a severe critical drubbing, and several PR missteps that alienated her audience. Here's a breakdown of why the album struggled. The commercial performance, the album debuted at number 6 on the Billboard 200 with roughly 48,000 units. That's actually pretty darn good. I don't know why they're saying that. That's not good, but we'll see. For a global superstar, this was a significant drop from her peak, which was her album Prism, which debuted at 286,000. Okay, so this is why they're calling it low. They're using her previous data to call it low. It wouldn't be low in the context of you and I getting on the Billboard, right? But going from 286,000 units to 48,000 units is a huge drop, again, for the machine, for the brand Katy Perry. That, again, as the person Katy Perry, we would applaud that. That's awesome. That's why I said what I said in the beginning. But then when you juxtapose it to the data of her business, yeah, that looks horrendous. Like, you never want to see that when it comes to business, but we're going to get into why that happens. Why that happens is going to be way more important than reacting to the numbers and being all scary and stuff. This will help you make better decisions as an artist when you understand why the numbers are the numbers instead of just reacting to the numbers. So whenever somebody's tweeting out their sales and they don't explain why the sales are the sales, just know you don't know why the sales are the sales. So it says, the album fell off the charts quickly, and within weeks of its September 2024 release, it had already dropped out of the Billboard 200, failing to produce a sticky radio hit. So basically what they're banking on when you get on the Billboard 100 is that's kind of like having the end caps on a grocery store. Being on the end caps of a grocery store means that you ever walk down like the main part of your grocery aisle, and then you notice just before the entrance of each aisle, there's really cool sales items and never before seen items. Well, that helps you buy those things a lot quicker on an impulse. You go, oh, wow, that's cool. And then buy it. And then you go on with your shopping, right? Billboard helps musicians do that in a sense, because you know the name Katy Perry, because you've seen her around, she's done fireworks and you've heard her music before. The odds of you getting up and going to her aisle and then picking her off the shelf is lower because you're used to the brand now. But if Katy Perry was on the end cap, shiny, with a brand new album, and it said number 2 in the world, then you would be like, I wonder what that is, and I want to try it out, and you'll maybe impulse buy it, right? And so her company, team, brand, the Katy Perry IP, needs this position in order to probably meet their bottom line. This in combination with tours, in combination with whatever her fans are doing, in combination with maybe, I don't know, she might have an email list to do like, gigs and things like that. So she can do more intimate gigs with smaller groups and venues and things like that. Whatever she does to make her money, right? This is going to be I guess you can say, wrench in the machine that she needs to call Katy Perry. It's not about her as an artist. Her creative freedom is not the priority here, okay? And so what they also mean by a sticky radio hit is one that's going to actually stay on that end cap of the grocery store and keep more impulse buying happening. Like, because it's in the radio and is getting more spins, more people will listen to it and increase the odds of more people buying your album or streaming it because they like how it sounds. It also says the lead single of the album, titled Woman's World, peaked at number 63 on Billboard Hot 100 and then vanished shortly after, failing to gain any traction on streaming platforms. So they had a hot song that just vanished. They had a hot album that just vanished. And basically the work that they were banking on, or the result that they were banking on, didn't last as long. So now when we think about investors of music, you remember that lady from the TED Talk who was saying how she chooses who to do business with? Suddenly your numbers and metrics aren't meeting their ROI, their expected return on their investments. Now, fans of Katy Perry probably don't give a single crap. They're probably in love with Katy Perry and just love that she's out here working, trying things and putting things out. But again, as a pop star, you don't have that grace in the business. You have that grace as an artist because, again, we like you and you're cool. But if you want this Katy Perry brand to work, you just missed a huge opportunity getting onto this billboard and then getting off of it for whatever reasons. And we're going to get into some of the reasons here. So the album 143 became one of the lowest rated albums in the history of Metacritic, at one point holding a score of 37 out of 100. So Metacritic is just the way people kind of give their opinions on albums and music and things like that. There's a scoring system, as you can see, from 1 to 100, and it's very fleshed out. It's usually like really well thought out. A lot of it does come down to the understanding of the actual critic, so just take that with a grain of salt. A lot of people, like the Joe Budden podcast, will have very good influence, but they won't necessarily have the expertise or experience to give a level of, laser focused understanding of what they're looking at. Like, I could listen to a Prince album and I probably wouldn't understand it completely, even with like all my musical experience and like, I get it and I understand it. I can try, but there's going to be some things in there that I probably just wouldn't get, either culturally, probably even musically, and then of course performance wise, like just the spirit and vibe of what it is that Prince puts in his music. So that of which usually has to come from the artists themselves. That's why I try to tell artists to, if you're going to create these things, be in control of it, because these in-depth conversations aren't going to happen often. Like, we can't dig into the mind of like our favorite artists all the time until they start getting on social media, and then we're offended or confused as to why they think. So they just don't do that. And so when we're looking at these type of sites, critics and criticisms and things like that, we have to keep that in mind, that a lot of the times our understanding is our understanding. It's limited. It's from our perspective. So yes, it is very low on Metacritic, but again, these are people's job is to criticize. Okay, so let's just keep that in mind. So they could be criticizing it from, hey, the pop era, comparing her to herself, or they could be comparing it as a fan and lover of music or lover of Katy Perry, and they could be accurately depicting their opinion or their interpretation of her music. We don't really know. And that's the part that, artists have to kind of struggle and navigate with, which is why somebody like a Katy Perry or a La Russell needs someone that they trust. You need that person that I forgot what it was called. There's a person you need in your counsel that will always give you like the doom and gloom and terrible situation. You need somebody to give you motivation, and you need somebody to bring complete objective clarity to your decisions, right? To the point to where you don't even you don't have any sentimental relationship with them outside of that, right? This could be like a tiny old Asian man who doesn't even speak your language. You trust him with his decisions because of his wisdom, right? This can be a very, very mean old fat white lady who always complains about everything, and she sees the negative sides of things. You need their perspectives so that way you can accurately contend your own against it and then figure out what the hell is going on. Because if you just go with your own, you're going to have limited understanding. If you go with the always negative Nancy lady, everything sucks. If you go with super, super positive, everything's great. You need to be accurate if you're going to be an artist, and that's highly important. But it also says here that the AI generated feel that it had also affected how the album performed. Numerous critics and listeners described the lyrics and production as lifeless or dated. Reviews from outlets like Rolling Stone and Pitchfork slammed the songwriting for being generic, with some comparing the tracks to algorithmically generated background music. So if I were to guess, I would say she probably didn't just generate AI music from a prompt. That's probably not the case. I would say what more than likely happened was that there was AI supplementation happening. And what that can look like is when you open Logic Pro, which is a digital audio workstation, you can use AI instruments. Like you can have it kind of just manipulate different MIDI points, data points, and play instruments through those data points. Now, what you can try to do is you can get it to try and feel like a human. Like if it's playing a guitar, you can change how it sounds with the fingers going across the strings. You can let the string resonate more with each pluck, or you can play the strings muted. And then on the other hand, when you're playing the piano, you can teach the AI system to lift the sustain pedals on the bottom. You can choose which sustain pedal to play. You can tell it how loud the sustain pedals sound in the mix, as well as how loud the hammers on the strings of the piano sound. So you can go really, really, really detailed. Now, all of that is cool, but the issue is that in reality, in life, when you're playing a piano, life is ugly. Life is beautifully ugly. So like if you're going to play a really good piece, we're going to hear you hit one hammer a little bit differently than the other 8, right? You can't consistently do a 16th measure perfectly. Like it's going to have some kind of inflection. There's going to be intonation in the room. There's going to be all kinds of things that honestly, if you're trained to hear it, you can't miss it. And that's a part that I think many of the older artists are starting to realize, is that, yeah, you are older artists, but we still can hear the human effect in your originality and in what you created. So somebody like, let's say, Deadmau5, you'll probably never feel a difference if he started using AI. You'll never know, because the overarching substance of his music comes from the digital era of automating music, quantization and stuff like that. But if you take somebody like a trumpet player and you start using AI, you're going to hear the difference, because you'll be like, he doesn't normally breathe there, or that C note doesn't usually sound like that when he plays that, and he usually drives that pitch down when he plays that note. Like you can hear these things, and as musicians we hear it, and as fans we hear it. But just like I was showing with Joe Budden's podcast, we all come to the same general conclusions, and so that's why her album wound up getting the review it got. And while I also have to say we got to take it with a grain of salt, because sometimes, just like I was saying with Deadmau5, digitization of music is great. But then on the other times, you have to contend with creative expression, the brand, and intellectual property that you actually have leverage in. What is it you're trying to do? And we've seen that with LaRussell, where LaRussell took that independent, I get to freestyle, do what I want kind of thing, get met with, well, what are you actually saying with structure? And so now we're seeing the reverse, where something is way too structured. It almost feels inhuman, and it's turning people off. It feels unnatural, because natural beauty is ugly. And that's honestly what probably went wrong here, is that her team tried to drive home the new technology. They tried to really utilize it, and people heard it. But the issue is that her brand wasn't based on that. Her brand wasn't based on making, digital music. It was based on probably her vocals and her expression and her story and things like that. The human aspect that most people really, really listen to music for the sake of music, not just to have you in the background like they're saying it is. And so it also says that the dance pop sound was criticized for feeling stuck in 2016. So you kind of you win for losing. Like you can't really win or lose in this situation. So they're saying she sounds like 2016, but at the same time, she sounds a little bit too rigid. What honestly I think needed to happen here was a sound shakeup, not necessarily a production shakeup. Now, I'm going to try to break down what I think that means in my own head. But basically, I think what she should have done was what Justin Timberlake did when he got out of NSYNC. What Justin Timberlake did was he didn't stop being Justin Timberlake. He just took Justin Timberlake to a new place. And that's hard to do in pop because at least back then, the pop audience was very stuck on like a certain flavor. Whereas hip hop was very diverse. Like we had all kinds of people from all different backgrounds in hip hop, whereas pop wasn't as diverse, not in terms of looks or gender or race, just in terms of sound. And so when you go into rock, it was slightly diverse. You know, you had indie rock, metal, and goth, and you had Blink 182, Red Hot Chili Peppers, Alien Ant Farm, and then System of a Down, and then Slipknot. Like it was a variety, right? But when it came to pop, generally pop they all kind of like did the same things, right? And so what Justin Timberlake wound up doing was he said, I want to be a high quality musician, but I want to make high quality music over here. And the reason that worked is because he still kept his musicality and then clearly was able to discern who to cooperate with similar tastes, musicality, and interests when it comes to music. Timbaland being that person. If Timbaland understood music the way he did, that's one thing. But Timbaland also had a high quality standard for his music, which then met with the pop standard of NSYNC's Justin Timberlake, which now they can now make music together if they cooperate creatively. So because they probably both had a love for hip hop and maybe Latin sounds, drums, or whatever it is, I'm just trying to think of some of the sounds that they use together. It helped them push all the other personal differences aside to actually make music for the sake of music. That's hard to do. As easy as I said that is really hard to do. Basically, what we're asking of artists today, to give you a broad example, is you need to be a staunch Republican and then go out to I guess whatever city you believe in and then vote for on behalf of somebody that's against you, right? And then in the vice versa, right? And the reason that's that serious is because both Justin Timberlake and Timbaland had their careers on the line with this decision. They wound up making a lot of music together. And so when we think about this new move to AI and stuff like that, they had to really bank on like, okay, we can't do what we used to do. We probably can't do what we want to do, but we have to do something that's going to work and what actually works. And because they had their experience and they also had their musicality, they were able to combine the two. Katy Perry's issue, it seems like here, is that her experience is not being met with the standards of the community that she's willing to serve. I don't know a Katy Perry fan from a Taylor Swift fan in the sense of like the energy, the music. Like I said, pop is usually very homogenous when it comes to the sound, but I don't really see how she's going to be able to do I guess you can say a production shakeup without having to kind of alienate some of the people that she's used to dealing with, like the people who from 2016, and also alienate the people who really want to hear that like natural feel. I would suggest Katy Perry gets into darker, more somber music in the sense of tone, not in the sense of lyricism, but tone. And what that would look like is not sexy, not hip hop, none of that. I mean, literally darker. Now, I'm only saying that because usually the demographic of who she is, a woman at her age, I don't know how old she is, but she's older than like, you know, the teeny boppers, right? They're usually connecting with audiences of women and men who like these type of artists that have a deeper story. So what I mean by darker is that we're going to need some more minor keys. We're going to need some more whole notes. We're going to need some more lower register singing and a really drive home of emotional lyricism and not bright, expressive lyricism. Because right now, the issue with you doing that is that that's the same thing we asked for about 10 years ago. And so when you're doing that and then you combine it with the technology we have, it's kind of like, okay, you're giving us a cheeseburger without like the love now. You're giving us what we expect of you now, and you're also removing the love it takes to do what we expected you to do. And you never want to do that to your fans. Now, I'm saying all this from an armchair. I don't know who's in her camp that's going to explain this to her, or if she even understands this the way I understand it. But that's how I look at what's happening based on just the simple video and text of her career. So if I come to that conclusion, I can only imagine somebody else has, with the thousands of hundreds of thousands of millions of dollars that they have on the line with her career. Okay. And so there's also a controversies that are surrounding the album. Dr. Luke, whoever Dr. Luke is, it says the biggest point of contention was Katy Perry's decision to work with producer Dr. Luke. Given the female empowerment theme of the lead single, many fans found it hypocritical and out of touch to collaborate with a producer who had been involved in a decade-long legal battle over sexual assault allegations by Kesha. Wow. Okay. So this is, yeah, she's kind of like hitting all the red flags, unfortunately. So we talked about the creative side. Now we got to get into the networking and who you're going to collaborate with and who you're going to like work with thing. So maybe she didn't know what's going on with Dr. Luke. Maybe she didn't know what's going on with Kesha. Should she know? Right? And so I make this point all the time when I talk about how artists' personal life really will affect their networking and how it will affect what's going on with them. But it doesn't have to if you pay attention to your personal life, right? So what I mean by that is I don't think Katy Perry, again, is intentionally looking for people who victimize people in crimes and then goes and makes music with them. That's again a level of super villainy level of IQ that we're not going to give to her or La Russell. Okay. So we're going to peel it back and say Dr. Luke probably kept his personal life personal, and Katy Perry's team had booked a session with a producer looking to make money. Okay. That's the basis I would like to look at this. And the reason I want to look at it this way, because then we can then say, okay, where does Katy's responsibility land? Okay. And then we can be kind of even and fair, right? We can say, okay, she's a signed musician with a brand for a name. So she doesn't necessarily get to do whatever the fuck she wants, right? But she does have control as far as this is hers and this is her music, right? How much of her responsibility goes into who she works with? And we got to consider that this is a brand named Katy Perry. This is not some person in a backyard like La Russell who has almost all the control of their music. This is Katy Perry, who probably has employees. She probably has higher ups and a little bit of like some legal counsel and things like that. That's given her a little bit of direction. And so we got to really be careful in the conviction we have in the position artists play, because again, we talked last week about how artists understand their positions. Many of them don't really know what's going on in the music industry, so I'm pretty sure they don't know what's going on in people's personal lives. And so let's take that with a grain of salt. But then we got to consider, how do you know if someone's personal life is going to affect your decision to work with them, right? So what are some of those things? This particular example is sexual assault allegations, okay? So how do you know that sexual assault allegations are going to affect you when you see people working with people like Chris Brown? You see people working with Diddy. You see people working with, if you want to take it off of sexual assault, just crime in general, you've seen people working with people who have DUIs, drug trafficking charges, gun charges, illegal gun charges. You see all these different things. And these are high level people in the music industry, that of which if you were to tell a music student that, you would then turn them off from joining the music industry. Okay. So when we're thinking about this, how do we consider what she used as conviction in her decision to work with a Dr. Luke? I don't know. Like, I don't know who a Dr. Luke is because I'm just in my own world most of the day. But to think that she was like, I'm going to work with Mr. Sexual Assault, it's kind of crazy. I don't think that's the case. But it is a thing that many artists have to consider, which is why when we started talking about collaboration, I said most of the collaborations I'm going to do, I'm not putting my name on. I'm not putting my name on, just for that reason right there, because I could be in the studio with Mr. Bang Bang Shoot 'em Up and we make a really, really cool song, and then he gets bang bang shot at it, and I got to be the one living to stand with the fact that this is the circumstance I got to deal with, whether it's a backlash, whether it's the you know, whatever comes from that situation, right? So be very, 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 very careful and clear with who you collaborate with musically, and just remember to focus it on it being music. Rappers like to be friends with people who are just friends and like they're homies from high school, and it doesn't really do anything, right? And then it also has two more notes here, and it says the music video for Woman's World was criticized for being performatively feminist that felt more like satire than a genuine anthem. So she pulled a feminist version of La Russell, where she just used a bunch of talking points, and people were just kind of like, what do you mean? What are you talking about? Do you believe what you're saying? And because it wasn't expressed in the video, they just walked away with a bunch of images and symbols, probably. Then it says also there were environmental concerns. While filming the video for Lifetimes in Spain, Perry's production team was investigated for allegedly filming in protected sand dunes on the Balearic Islands without proper authorization. So something like that usually, I think, is usually blown out of proportion, but it's more of a business problem than it is like a fan or musician problem. You gotta do things like the right way. So I don't think that's as big of a deal, but it does bring some kind of like, I guess here's where it can be a problem for musicians. What we've just described in this one album's run, in this one album's campaign, we've seen a series of bad decisions, like a bad business decisions. Working with people with sexual assault allegations. We got you filming videos in unauthorized locations. We got you not really diving deep into your songwriting to get past tone deaf writing. And then we're also getting bad criticisms talking about how unhuman and, you know, unloved and soulless the music sounds. So there's very bad signs. The first one being you have to be a human first. So when the song happens, we got to know a human made it and it feels nice. The second thing is that who you working with has to make sense. You can't really be working with people that are going to negatively affect your music. And then also you have to properly create the music. Like you got to do everything according to plan, which leads me to believe, again, that I don't think she's just going around like, I'm gonna work with the sexual assault dude, we gonna break the law to film the videos, and fuck humans, we gonna do AI. I don't think that's her case. I think what's happening is that her team, like the Joe Budden podcast squad, probably thinks on a surface level for artistry. They're probably not considering all of which that goes into being a musician, but they're considering, and a priority, more of the things that make you noticed in business, or like keep your name in the algorithm. And so when I said she needs to start going darker, that's because I'm thinking of a musical career at the stage she's at, and how to like compete with what I think is like amazing musicianship for a solo female artist, right? They're thinking about, well, how do we keep the brand Katy Perry going? Because I have salary and I got a vacation coming up and Christmas is 6 months away and I don't know what's gonna, you know. So they have a whole different agenda than your creative expression. So let's get into the next topic here, and let's really dig deep into more of this same conversation, and let me know how you guys are feeling in the comments.
And was a nanny, and I believe working as a barista. And it was really when she started leaning into this bright red hair that her career started to take off. This is her at the NPR Tiny Desk performance. I honestly predict that this might be one of the biggest Halloween costumes next year. Let me know who else uses the Hollywood hair theory.
Okay, so pretty much what she was showing there was that I forgot her name, Chappelle. I want to say Sloan or Roan. I can't remember her last name. Somebody let me know in the chat. But basically, she was showing how the hairstyle choice that she made wound up being successful for her because of the opposite of what Katy Perry was dealing with. Katy Perry. But what was actually happening was that much of what she saw was trending, she dove into, and it was successful for her. But the thing was that she was able to maintain her creativity musically. So musically, a lot of people will try to satisfy the taste of everybody, and that's usually what changes what it is we like you for. Like when Ray Shrimmer started singing, or when the Migos stopped telling stories, or you know, when T-Pain stopped using auto-tune, it started to kind of be like, okay, so what are we really here for, you know? The problem that you're going to have to deal with most of the time is going to be navigating why this decision you're going to make is the decision you want to make. But outside of that problem, you're going to have to deal with navigating, well, what is this going to affect, or how is this going to affect my brand? And so Katy Perry, being as big as the brand she is, her decisions have to be hyper strategic. Whereas a Russell, he just went directly against his counsel. Just a straight up, I'm not going to listen to what you have to say. And so now you have to really navigate, well, what am I really doing this for? And I've said this before, you have to ask yourself, what do we want from the music industry? When we start making these songs and performing and putting our art and lives out there, are we saying we want people to look at us and call us cute? Do we want money? Do we want power? Do we want control? Are we doing this to bring shine a light on an agenda or a problem? Like many people use music as, like, people just use it as a vehicle to just say, hey, look at my gang, we're cool, or look at these problems, I need you to help. So let me know in the comments, if you were to be a musician today in 2026 going into 2027, why would you do it, and what would you expect from the music industry based on what we've seen today? And I got one more topic for you, and then we can go ahead and close out, and I'll get you guys on to brunch, lunch, whatever it is.
Once you start getting $100,000 plus per show, you get the cars, you get the houses, you're touring all over the world, playing for huge audiences. You learn lessons that the rest of the industry isn't learning. There are patterns and methods that these artists are seeing that, just like a shark on Shark Tank, if they were to lose everything, by having this knowledge, they could quickly get back to making millions, touring all over the world, and get to the top all over again.
So he's actually highlighting, or at least going to highlight, probably the difference between having those transferable skills that you'll need as a musician, specifically a musician, that of which you can see many, many successful people using. So the reason why you'll see consistencies in very successful people, like when you read their books, they kind of have like the same beliefs and principles, or just, you know, iterations of the same beliefs and principles, is because there's actually proven success in those things. So considering he showed like Shark Tanks and stuff like that. Shark Tank is a show about investors looking for businesses to invest in order to help them build their businesses, or just to get a return on investments in general, just to make money, right? The problem that artists are going to have is that they look at consumers first. They don't look at investors first when it comes to getting their principles. So a consumer would say, yo, this song is dope, I really love what you're doing, keep it up, right? And then an investor would say, well, what is working? And so it's two totally different perspectives, two totally different conversations. And when he's talking about being able to repeat everything, that's what I mentioned before, where you want to have all of these different skills, but then you also want to be able to repeat them. That's going to be the difference between somebody who's going to be in a Katy Perry experience and then be like, dang, what's going on? Or somebody who's going to be in a, I can't remember her name now. There was a girl we looked at yesterday at the Women in Music event. But I was saying that she's a student of music. So she learned basically these skills, or paid to learn these skills, and now she has them, and then can consistently repeat what it is she wants to do, to whether it's deliver a performance, make music, or network, right? And so hopefully we get into a lot of this with our pal here.
Everything. By having this knowledge, they could quickly get back to making millions, touring all over the world, and get to the top all over again. There are hidden secrets to being a multimillionaire touring music artist that you only really discover once you get to the top of the mountain. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. These are lessons and insights I've learned from working alongside the world's top music artists, management companies, agents, and global brands. But these lessons are actually pretty surprising. And today I'm going to group them into my top 12. Many of the artists I work with have not only cracked the code on how to be financially successful, how to be known and seen as an artist, but they've also learned how to feel joy, happiness, and fulfillment alongside the business part of their music and art. For me, I've spent the last 20 years of my life focused on three things: music, branding, and advertising.
So he made a good point about feeling like joy and things like that from your music. Like, I had a taste of that, and it does kind of feel like oh, okay, this is what they talk about when they say starving artist. Like you kind of realize, okay, this is what they mean. And to give you an example of that, that means like when you go to your job and you look at the benefits you get, all of those benefits there are there because you were here offering your time in return for those benefits and your hourly pay, right? And so along with that, there's also a bunch of other benefits that come with being in your state working there, and then also that state being within your government, and you get all these benefits. When you're a business owner, which is what an independent musician is, you have to give yourself all of those benefits. You have to negotiate with the state what your insurance is going to cost. You have to figure out who's going to pay for your funeral costs and all that stuff like that. When I was trying to, basically at my first job, somebody gave me a hint of that when they were in the interview process. I was asking about benefits, and they told me that they had their own insurance and their own benefits because they were basically working here, but then they had entrepreneurial ventures on the side. But for them, what they realized was that it actually was more beneficial for them to have the insurance that they had because I guess whatever company they worked for wasn't as good. Like they just, had better insurance. But all in all, that just goes to show you that you have to control all of this stuff, right? And so if you're not willing to do all of those things, then you have to really, really, really be considered about where it is you plan on being.
Side the business part of their music and art. For me, I've spent the last 20 years of my life focused on 3 things: music, branding, and advertising. And I'm going to distill down my top 12 lessons that I've learned from the last 20 years that I spent in the music industry. But before we get to it, let me quickly give you the abridged version of who I am and this crazy life that I've lived in music, art, and branding, as it'll give context to why these are my top 12 and the things that I've been lucky enough to see and learn.
So one thing I want you guys to pay attention to, especially for you younger artists, I know this is a podcast, reacting to a podcast, and there's not really much specifically musical going on, but I want you to pay attention to the framing of the shot in his video. So here is where you get to see, if it's not him, it's his understanding to deliver this. I want you to see his representation of his technical skill, or the technical skill in this shot. So the lighting is immaculate. The audio is good. I would prefer not to see the mic. That's just my personal preference, but the mic is really, really good. It's a Shure mic, top of the line. He looks clean, right? His outfit looks identifiable. He has a hat on indoors, so that it goes to show you that there's something that doesn't necessarily need to happen, that he's a decision, right? But then when you look in the background, there's books. We can't really see the books, but they're there to cause visual difference, right? Now, there's also little like clip-on lights on the top. Those don't come with the shelf, right? So what I'm highlighting here is that there's a lot of intention to how to keep your attention. And so as I build my channel and things like that, I'm going to be picking up on stuff like that. But that's one of the things I need younger artists to pay attention to. And then on the reverse, older artists to pay attention to, like Katy Perry, who are realizing, oh snap, this is what is called high quality now. This is what people are demanding now. So this is a really good showcase of how you can be very talented in music, like he's about to hopefully explain to us, but then also you have to be very talented in your technical skill, understanding technology.
Crazy life that I've lived in music, art, and branding, as it'll give context to why these are my top 12 and the things that I've been lucky enough to see and learn. So I'm Chris Alba. When I was 17, I started collecting records while I was working at Blockbuster Video in my small town. Back then, I loved 3 things.
Wow, Blockbuster. Wow.
Music, movies, and art. I moved from my small town to California in the early 2000s with stars in my eyes. And in college, I studied film, screenwriting, storytelling, and psychology.
Okay. Whoa. Whoa. I don't know if that was a strategic choice to go into school that route, but the fact that he did gave him the toolkit needed to do what he's about to explain to us. Ah, man, I can't remember this artist. I want to remember her name so bad. But she basically, she went to school for Berkeley, and she was explaining it in the Women in Music event, but I can't remember it. But basically what that showed me was that she's a student. somebody had already the professional skills lined up for her and then put her through a curriculum that of which she passed and then proved that she understood these concepts. He just named some really, 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 really particular courses and directives for him to learn and control that of which he wants to do. So I want you to compare that to somebody who's like maybe a fan who's going to buy an AI engine and then just start making music on TikTok. I want you to compare that to the violinist who's been teaching or going to school for years and didn't really go to school for this, right? And I want you to compare that to the people who are rappers and singers and artists that just keep rapping and keep singing and don't actually get a formal education. Just consider that. That's why I wanted to juxtapose the conversation between Joe Budden and his co-host and the difference between a student of music and a person who's using music just to get a living, basically.
California in the early 2000s with stars in my eyes. And in college, I studied film, screenwriting, storytelling, and psychology. And at the back end of film school, after having built a pretty solid record collection, I saw this documentary called Scratch, which was a doc about the culture of DJing and battle DJs.
People don't do this no more. I miss scratching because scratching turned DJing or turntables into an actual instrument. Today, DJs just press a button and they just kind of like phase in and out and try to beat map. But actual like knowing what key signatures are coming up, having records lined up for perfect mixes and knowing how to drop break beats in between songs so you get a completely new song. When I was doing that in college on my little laptop and the little digital version of that, people weren't really into that. People would prefer to just hear the song they want to hear with no changes and iterations. So again, when we think about creative expression and freedom, would it be smart as a DJ today to keep scratching or to give the people what they're asking for?
And that changed everything for me. After seeing the doc, I immediately bought 2 Technique 1200s and a mixer and started DJing parties all over Orange County and LA. The local DJ thing popped for me pretty quickly, and I was having a blast just performing and curating these events all over SoCal. And I had a friend of mine who started managing me, and we started throwing parties together. Those parties started as small 50-person events where we were showcasing all the new music I was finding in the underground. And also this is blog era, so all the stuff that I was finding online on these blogs. And a lot of the
So by this time, to juxtapose it to my career, I think I was just probably getting out of college around like 2011, 2013, like just wrapping things up. And when he says the blog era, this is where a lot of the birth of what we see today in terms of the creativity of music comes from. This is how people looked at songs. It wasn't, hey, that's a pretty girl, she can really sing, let me buy her album. It was the description, it was the metadata, it was, can I get it for $10 free on Amazon? Will it be cool on my friend's top 10 on MySpace and things like that? It was a totally different thing. So when people started writing music, R&B was probably the first to get hit because most people were dating online. Most people were looking for friendship online. So when it came to actual emotional connection through music and singing, the lyricism started to fade because people wanted to make quotables and tweetable lyrics that people could put on their vision board to talk about their boyfriend that maybe didn't leave the toilet seat down. And so a lot of the music changed over time just because of this delivery medium.
Sound we were doing was the precursor to what became EDM. Parties we were doing went from 50 people to 100 people to 200 people to 500 people to 1,000 people to 2,000 people and beyond. We threw thousands of parties all over California. We ended up taking residency at the Avalon Theater in Hollywood and curated a weekly Friday night there called Control. That event ran for 10 years every Friday and had many of today's top dance music artists play their very first shows there. Zedd, Porter Robinson, Dylan Francis, Skrillex, and many more got their start at that event. I think Skrillex even got signed to his now agent after the agent saw him perform at our event. Because I was DJing alongside all these great artists at different events, we became friends, and many of them were kind enough to teach me the tricks and trades of modern dance music production. Skrillex was my first music mentor. He was my neighbor. He lived across the street from me. His manager knew my manager, and Skrill became the first guy who taught me how to cook.
Okay, so we do gotta point this out too. This video is meant to show you how you can get music industry knowledge, but I do have to point out and drive home that there is a lot of luck in the situation that he's explaining right now. So he went to school in California for film, psychology, and I think he said writing. That's a shot in the dark, and I'm so glad that worked out for him. So many people have tried to do that. I know people that did that, and I don't know where they are anymore. And so that's lucky. The fact that he started throwing parties and people were attracted to his music, that's luck as well. The part that's not luck is him realizing that and then using that information and the stuff he learned in school to drive all of his success home. So on top of all of that luck, the last bit of luck here is that who you know matters. So when he started meeting certain people, like you'll come across people that are in your peer group. I've met them where like you can be like, that's a superstar. Some people have said that to me, and I don't know if they're right or accurate. But the point is that you can meet people that are doing really, really great things in real time, and you'll kind of feel it like, okay, maybe I need this person in my network. And then later on in life, it'll kind of work out because they'll be doing great, or maybe you'll be doing great, and then you can help each other, right? But the fact that both of these people were neighbors and their managers knew each other, that's luck and small circle proximity kind of like circumstance. So take that with a grain of salt. You might go to California and flunk out of school. You might go to California and graduate and nobody likes your music. You might go to California, graduate, and people love your music, but you get hooked on drugs. You might go to California and people love your music and you stay sober, but people realize you're not really about it and don't really care about what you're doing, or just you said the wrong thing on the internet like LaRussell. You have to just be very, very careful with what he just explained and projecting it onto yourself.
In the studio, I spent the next decade releasing music on different cool indie dance labels like Diplo's Mad Decent Records. I was doing bootleg remixes for the internet. And I also got to be known as like
bootleg remixes for the internet is stealing. I just want everybody to just be clear. That's stealing. We don't condone that. That's just literally stealing. He's saying that slightly, but you know, we all did it. I talked about Napster and all that stuff too. So
a go-to remixer for major labels like Interscope, Def Jam, and Capitol Records. I was lucky enough that I got to tour all over the world with some of dance music's biggest artists, and I got to see the world through music. And that completely changed me as a person and opened my eyes to so much of the world and humanity. 10 years ago, I started my creative agency, The Cult Creatives. We've done tens of millions of dollars in business and have worked with some of the largest music artists in the world, as well as global Fortune 500 companies. Cult's core competency is that we do creative direction and branding for music artists, as well as live visuals, staging concepts, music videos, and design. So I've had the lucky experience of being on all sides of music. I've been the super fan, the collector, the person who absolutely loves the music and the art. I've been the artist, I've been the DJ, I've been the producer, I've been the A&R person, I've been the concert promoter, I've been the talent buyer, I've been the creative director, the designer, the marketeer, and the social media strategist. So
the only thing he's missing here is the executive. Now, the executive is really going to be the difference between the person who's going to say, merge this company with Warner, right? So he's had all the perspectives of the creation and the fun parts and making the music and making the experience for the fan and making everything dope. When we start to dive into independent musicianship, there's another hat on there that you have to put on that is cold, stoic, and rules with an iron fist wrapped in velvet.
I've got to see so many different sides of this industry and getting to see it all working alongside the industry's top artists. Life story over. Here are my top 12 lessons that I've learned from 20 years in the music industry. Number 1, make it for you first and keep it fresh. If you aren't excited, they aren't excited. Rick Rubin has a philosophy that as artists, we should put the audience last. You make it the best you can, but you're making it for yourself. Like if you were a clothing designer making yourself a jacket, you custom make something that would likely be one of your favorite things in your closet, and it would be one of your go-tos that you would consistently be grabbing for. This was something I saw over and over in studio sessions I'd be in with dance music's top producers. They were aware that an audience was going to hear it, but that didn't inform any of the choices they made inside of the studio. They made it for them, And they were pleased if other people liked it, but that's not why they made it. They were craftspeople, and the craft is really what they loved.
So, based on what he said, and I agree with what he said, but based on what he said, can you see how this can create problems in an industry? Can you see where the problem lies? If not, I will show it to you. But there's a very, very subtle way that this can be an issue. And he's probably going to show how to get around the issue. But what's going to happen is the craftsman now has to deliver on the demands of the consumer. So yes, you can do whatever it is you want. Yes, you can invest in whatever you want. We've seen Andre 3000 play the flute in the airport. The issue is when we start wanting something from the music industry wants something in return. And so without having to get into some kind of worship culture, you have to just have a transactional relationship and understand what it is that you're doing and understand where your position is in the music industry. That's why when I was pointing out the executive part, yes, you can throw parties. Yes, you can market. Yes, you can create images. And yes, you can create vibes and immersive experiences. But when it comes to power, clearly none of that matters to Spotify. Like that's probably like an eighth of the problem for Amazon's music wing. You know, so we have to really, really understand that part, because yes, you can create whatever you want, but when you have a situation where what you're creating is being put on a platform that you don't control and you can't leverage to get any more power or resources or let alone income, I think we should really be strategic on how we place our craftsmanship in the public. Like, yeah, have the tools, do whatever you want. But when we start facilitating businesses, I think we should be very careful, because this is why they say most businesses fail. People start businesses because they just feel something and don't look at the market. They don't look at like how they're going to have to work for their income and their salary. Like I was talking about having to pay for your own insurance and things like that. There's no job saving you from your bad, or I guess you can say misinformed decisions. So there is a bit of luck and there's a bit of understanding that you're going to need going into this.
And I've experienced many different kinds of artists through the years, but there's two types specifically that stick out to me. One type of artist is the system hacker. They would get a good sense of what the game was and where we were in the current moment, whether it was followers or streams, and they would try to hack the game. They would try to game the system for positioning. The other type of artist was the one that I just mentioned, where they seemed to be striving to create the best art that they could. It was about the craft for them. They weren't trying to game the system. They were doing the hard, slow work of learning and getting better and being obsessed with their craft. And guess what? Spoiler alert, the second type of artist is always bigger and had more followers, sold more tickets, and had more devout fans. And the second part of this is keeping it fresh. How many different styles of music has Diplo done over the years? And all feels like him in some way. I've seen a lot of artists that stumble onto a sound that people seem to love, but then they get stuck, and it's because they're letting the audience drive them in the studio and they don't keep it fresh for themselves. So it goes stale for the audience because it's not fresh for them. However, you can continually spice things up. Go back to the beginning, re-challenge yourself, travel, collaborate with new artists, go out and experience a scene, get out of the studio, push yourself out of your comfort zone. You'll feel the magic of creation and doing something new. The audience will feel this too. Number two.
So he's using a lot of vague language there, but I do agree with him. I guess to bring more specificity to what he's saying, the life experience you get as an artist is going to help develop the foundation of your artist story. And I learned this through sales, actually, funnily enough. When the best salesmen have a story to tell, and the story that they tell usually isn't one that's going to be like some kind of, oh, buy my product. It's like, it's not a sob story. It's usually just their story, right? And the story that they try to tell is something of like maybe how, for example, in musicians, how maybe playing the instrument changed their life. Like maybe the instrument provided them with opportunities they wouldn't have seen working a normal 9 to 5. And telling that story can really connect with people because they don't necessarily relate, but they also can try to empathize, right? Most people, when they think of musicians, like how he told his story in the beginning, the reason he did that, he was very strategic about that, was because it validated what he's about to say. It validated everything that he's about to say, but he also brought in the conviction that was there with the videos, but also with the knowledge that he has. Like, he's going to basically explain from his perspective as a student and actual performer what it is that he knows. That's why he did that. And so when we notice that, this is how he's understood music to be more successful. The music that has that human touch that AI can't have, and also that has that human experience that AI can't have. And so now that it's there, he's able to learn how to use that same story to commodify it and turn it into a product. The part that many artists are going to have to struggle with doing this is going through this process, living life, and not getting chewed up and spit out at the same time, because we like the whole artists go through painful stories and it makes the best music, until we realize that the girl singing it had to actually go through some traumatic shit, or the guy that did it is never going to be the same again, and he can't, feel the way he did as a young man. And so now when we consider these real life situations, this is why I was saying there's a bit of luck in what he's saying, and there's a reason why he's being a little bit vague when he says get out of the studio. A part of that process is being able to navigate to places that's going to help you when you leave the studio. You can't leave the studio and then go to the strip club, get drunk, and then come back and then start rapping about that. Eventually, you're going to be 40. You can't get out the studio and then just keep dating guys and keep dating guys and keep dating guys. Eventually, you'll be 40. And so the point is that he's saying is you want to have a variety of experiences to pull from, a variety of perspectives, and then also a variety of interactions that you can pull from, because those experiences and interactions are actually happening in the real world that people can then draw from when you sing your songs. That's the part that makes that connection. And I think he's just being vague just to give the point in general. But that's a very important to understand as an artist, because your environment may be shitty. Like your hometown may be a meth Bible Belt town. Getting out of the studio there probably means going to a different state. You see the difference here? Maybe you're from the hood and you've been around rappers making drill music in New York for the past 5 years. Maybe getting out of the studio for you means leaving the country, going to a Muslim nation that's like really nice. Maybe you need some kind of shift of perspective. Another example I can give you this, and then we can continue on as we close out, is that when you look at the story, again, successful story breeds successful business stories. The story of Nipsey Hussle, when he explains his origin story as a young man, he explains the story of how his parents sent him back to his homeland and how he had to experience life, I think he said for a summer or a couple summers, of just an entirely different lifestyle. And then when he came back home, it gave him appreciation for the things he had, but it also showed him how little everybody else appreciated the good things that he saw, which then drew the human connection to how he valued whatever it is he valued, whether it's business, life, or whatever. Those same driving mechanisms for him being a young man and seeing how other people lived as a young man sat with him to where how you can talk to an old man who's been a soldier and he can have a little bit of empathy for the people who are just civilians amongst him. Okay. And so that's the point that he's, I guess you could say, in general, trying to drive home here.
Get out of the studio. Push yourself out of your comfort zone. You'll feel the magic of creation and doing something new. The audience will feel this too. Number 2, have a mission. The greats have a mission. They have something to prove to themselves. There's a big difference between someone who is doing something as a hobby and someone who's doing something with purpose and they have a mission. A hobby often finds its way to the bottom of the totem pole of life's priorities. A mission filled with real purpose always sits at the top of the totem pole. There's a different kind of energy you feel around people who are on a mission. They move quicker through conversations and meetings. They're ultra committed, sometimes to a fault. I've seen artists with 103-degree fever throwing up in a bucket on stage behind the DJ booth and then performing at a level where the audience has no idea that they're even sick. A greater purpose gives you more drive.
And that point right there is actually something that most, even musicians, cannot conceptualize. Like, I'll give you a lower spectrum example, and I'll give you a regular example, and then we can go ahead and close out. But essentially, when you think about like working out, right? If I had you do a workout and I asked you at the end of the workout, was it difficult? And you were like, on a scale of 1 to 10, it was like a 6 or a 7. That is considered a normal, average, everyday, run-of-the-mill cheeseburger workout, right? But if you told me it was a 9, then that means that was a great workout. You pushed yourself. You pushed yourself to the point to where you felt like there was almost no more in the tank, and you needed some kind of like motivation mentally to push you because your body was telling you to stop. So when you consider that, and then you think about all the people you call successful, all the people you call driven and passionate, when they wake up in the morning, they put their feet on the floor. What would they sacrifice for their mission? And you can go as far as Killmonger shooting his girlfriend, Thanos snapping his fingers, to Batman sacrificing his, anger in a moment, right? A lot of times people will have to deal with that situation, and it's going to be something you're not necessarily going to have to take the time to think about. You have to be ready for that moment. And usually if you're an artist in like a viral situation, like he said, Skrillex was like his neighbor at a show, or whoever he said was throwing up. Eminem wrote a song about that, Mom Spaghetti. When you're in the moment and you're trying to lose yourself, your creative freedom is either going to lift and drive you, or it's going to hinder you and destroy everything if you're not prepared. So let me know if you guys enjoyed this conversation. This was Musician Talks with DameSmiff. I basically wanted to break down for you guys a little bit of how I view objectivity and creative freedom and being able to do whatever you want. And I feel like I should be able to say whatever I want on the microphone and stuff like that. And let me know how you guys feel about this. I will see you guys tomorrow morning for the last episode of the week. It's Friday, y'all, but today is Thursday.